Today's webinar. My name is Adam Golov, Marketing and Communications Manager at Data Conversion Laboratory, and I will be your moderator today. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know we will allow time at the end of the webinar for questions and answers, so please write your questions in the chat area as they come to mind. If we don't have time to answer them all, we will make them available on our website. For those of you who are not familiar with DCL, we convert and organize content to create electronic documents, populate databases, publish on the web, and basically get it ready for tomorrow's technology. DCL services help you refine your document conversion strategy, identify document redundancy, extract metadata, and transform legacy and future documents for real needs, today and in the future. DCL serves a broad client base spanning all industries. Today, we are thrilled to introduce Joan Lasselle, President, Lasselle-Ramsay, and Amber Swope, DITA Specialist in Data Strategies. Joan Lasselle is President of Lasselle-Ramsay Incorporated. Joan has over 25 years' experience designing and developing new product content and training for high-tech, healthcare, finance, and insurance industries. Since 2000, Lasselle-Ramsay has worked with their clients to help them move to the use of XML structured content to help streamline the development of content and customize output in multiple forms and formats. She is a past board member of Content Management Professionals and a regular contributor at industry conferences. Joan holds a Master's of Education from the University of Oregon. Amber Swope is an internationally recognized expert on the Darwin information typing architecture who specializes in helping teams design and implement unified content development environments for XML content. These environments provide custom, integrated support for authoring, storing, publishing, and localizing content. With over 20 years of experience in the information development field and 9 years of data expertise, Amber helps teams develop and optimize their environments to improve efficiency and reduce costs. In addition to co-authoring the data maturity model, Amber has authored numerous papers and articles on information design, development, and architecture, and presented at leading industry conferences. Amber holds a Master's in Technical and Professional Writing and a Certificate in Computer Technical Writing from Northeastern University. Without further ado, welcome Joan Lasselle and Amber Swope.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you all for attending. This is Joan Lasselle from Lasselle-Ramsay. And all of us that are on the call today are involved with content, I'm sure. And today we're all asked to deliver quality content at lower cost and in less time. At that same time, our customers are demanding more. They need multiple outputs. They want support for mobility. Globalization demands translation into more and more languages, and cycle times and release schedules are shorter. So how do we meet these needs when it comes to the information that's the cornerstone of the customer experience? Today, Amber and I want to look at moving to a new model where content and the content development processes can be shared across functions. I'm going to start off by talking about why that model is important, and then Amber will share how XML and DITA can be a key element to make it happen. But before we start, we'd like to do a short poll to learn who's on the call. Adam, do you want to put that call up? Because we're talking about working cross-functionally, we'd like to know what functions are represented, so where you're from. Are people seeing the poll, Adam?
Yes, they are.
Okay. So I'm not sure, Adam, if you're seeing people indicating where they're from, if there's...
Yes, we have about 75% of the attendees have already participated in the poll.
Okay. Do you want to share some of the results so that we can just know where folks are from?
Sure. As of right now, 70% of respondents indicated that they're with technical communications.
Okay.
25% have indicated they are with support. 15% have indicated that they are with marketing. And 10% each have indicated they're with product training and professional services.
Okay, great. So we've got a cross section. Of folks. So that's terrific. So let's begin. Let's start by talking about how content is developed today. Content is created throughout the enterprise by different functions, those that we have represented on the call. Everyone needs to get their own content out the door, and just like horses racing toward the finish line, everyone else on the track is a distraction. Individual organizations generally have their own processes and procedures, their own deliverables, and they generally use different tools to get the work done. So what's the problem? If the work is getting done, do we need to change? We know the problem comes because this scenario often results in information that is redundant, can easily get out of date and be inconsistent, can be hard to find, and often doesn't align with business goals or customer needs. Because content is so easy to create today, information is generated all the time to meet specific needs throughout the organization. The problem is figuring out how to gain leverage rather than simply creating more. We know to our customers, whether they are internal or external, there's only one company. When they look for information, they want to find it quickly. They want to know that the information is correct. They can't take time to figure out if the information is up to date or if it aligns to the product version they have. They need access and they need reliability. They don't care or know if the information is coming from tech docs or learning or support. If there's a difference in what they learn in a training class and what they see in an online help article or read in a support database, which do they trust? This inconsistency leads to customer confusion and lowers customer satisfaction and creates internal process inefficiencies. When information is developed in different organizations, there often isn't a shared understanding of what the end user or customer needs, and there isn't often alignment about the information produced by different organizations. All companies today are looking for business cases that improve process efficiency and customer experience. How do we move to a new approach for our content that we developed to support those two goals? How do we move to an approach that looks at content as a service we provide to our customers and build a process that's streamlined and leverages the work of all of us? I know from our own company's experience that leveraging and sharing content from a single repository can have real benefits for the customer and for the enterprise. Content created for support agents, for example, can be shared with customers through a public website to build a common vocabulary and problem-solving approach that helps to deflect calls and shorten support calls. Some of this information can be shared also with sales support to be sure customer expectations align directly to the products that are being sold. Because the information, or when the information is managed from a single repository, there can be real efficiency, and there can be tremendous efficiency when you add new products. But the question is always, when you want to move to a new model, where to begin. When people think about sharing content, they often start with the idea of reuse. That sometimes creates resistance because each organization, as I said, have their own content, their own tools, and their own processes. And we know that monolithic models don't fit most large enterprises. So it's more a matter of the approach and using it to gain leverage, not to duplicate, not to take exactly what one organization has done and try and replicate it in another. It's more about finding core content that can be shared and potentially repurposed. It's finding processes and procedures and tools that can be leveraged across functions to streamline and automate content development and delivery and ensure overall quality. So rather than emphasizing reuse as a place to start, we want to suggest that you change the conversation. I once heard that collaboration, I heard it defined as bringing people to the table and letting them talk. And that's what Amber and I want to suggest, a collaborative approach between functions that engages the appropriate stakeholders in each functional area to find the opportunity space to share content and leverage tools and processes. It starts by talking about the unique value of each organization and the content challenges they are facing, because they're different in different functional areas. Different functional areas exist for a reason. You need to identify and acknowledge the value that each organization brings to the customer experience and work to enhance that through shared content and a shared approach, not a cookie-cutter approach. The opportunity may be different between tech pubs and training, or tech pubs and support, or marketing and TechCom. But starting by developing a clear understanding of issues and opportunities rather than selling your approach provides a much stronger starting point for getting people to really acknowledge and see the value. And of course, in any kind of new opportunity, success depends on people. You have to get buy-in. That's why the conversation and collaboration is so important as a place to start if you want to move to a new model. There's always going to be resistance to change. Finding the business case is only one part of the effort. Your team has to understand what's in it for them. They need to understand the benefit to the business and to your customers and to them. Will their life be easier? What's it going to take to get there, and how will they be supported in making the change? Will it open up new opportunities for them and relieve them of some monotonous tasks that don't add that much value? For example, how much time do folks spend looking for all the information on a topic? Can they easily find it? How much time is spent reformatting slides to match a specific look and feel? Do you have good version control to make it easy to roll back to previous versions or to support agile development? None of these are about content reuse, but they are about the approach that we're suggesting. Finding out people's concerns early can help ensure success. So what are the elements that we're talking about in this sort of integrated architecture? What are the components that you can share and leverage? Here's a simple representation of an integrated architecture that includes some key elements. It includes a repository where content can reside. Some may be shared or not by functional areas that contribute to customer success and satisfaction. So there may be shared content in there, or it may be a place for you to store content that you're not sharing as well. But it's in a central repository so that you can have things like version control. You can have things like one place to look for all of your content. But it takes more than just having that content to make the new approach work. It's really a systems approach that includes understanding customer needs and requirements, as well as looking at the tool set. There may be adding some new tools, and that's one of the things Amber's going to be talking about, or using your existing tools, or you may be replacing some tools as well. It also can require new skill sets from the team, and maybe those skill sets are things that you can use across functions. So information architecture is a big piece of this. Is that something that can be shared across teams to really understand what information you have and what information can potentially be shared? How you have to tag that information in order to find it and get access to it. Tools, team members, and customer requirements, process and procedures, these are all elements that can be shared and leveraged. They may not be the same for all organizations. That's part of the reason, again, for going back to that collaboration and going back to that conversation to find out what's the unique value of how different organizations deal with content, what content they need, to find out how this approach can really work for you. There are some elements that are really common and that we believe contribute to the success of this new approach. The first is, again, going back to that clear understanding of what you're trying to do, asking the question why. Why are we doing this? And the understanding of the content requirements of each organization and what their content challenges are. What does success look like? What are the things that you're concerned about in the future? Next is really structuring content. If you want to share content or reuse it or repurpose it, it really needs to be written in such a way that it can be shared, repurposed, and reused. And that means authoring in a structured format. The third is really using XML, and we want to suggest DITA to give you the flexibility you need to manage that content across functions, to be able to find it, to be able to repurpose it and transform it into different forms and formats. And that's what Amber's going to talk about, how DITA can be a really key tool to support this new approach. So I know, Amber, do you want to do the second poll now so that we can find out where folks want to share content, and maybe you can put that up?
I will attempt to do so.
Are you ready, and I'll make you the presenter?
Yes, that would be great, thanks. All right. Is the poll up?
The poll is up. I'm seeing the poll.
Okay.
Yes, Amber, about more than half of the attendees have already responded.
Okay, great. And I'll take this opportunity to apologize if I start coughing during this webinar. I don't usually sound like Kathleen Turner, but I'm suffering from some allergies, so I hope everyone can bear with me. And have you made me the presenter?
So, Amber, I'm not seeing your screen, but...
Did someone make me the presenter?
I did.
There should be a pop-up, Amber, that you have to accept.
And I'm looking for it, of course. Ah, there it is. All right, where is it? And of course, it's not showing up. Could you try resetting me as the presenter?
Let's see. I don't have you as an option. That's why.
All right, I'm going to send. No, okay. So it says that I'm the presenter, but I'm having difficulty showing my screen for some reason.
But we're not seeing your screen, right?
No.
So I don't know.
Well,
Adam, do you want me to take it back and try again, or?
Well, let me close the poll and see if that works.
Okay.
1 second.
That seems to be what's happening.
That's the issue then. Can you see now?
Can.
Okay, great. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is talk to you about what DITA is. And DITA is a Darwin Information Typing Architecture. And it stands for Darwin, which means that it's an evolutionary, adaptable architecture that can adjust and evolve as your business needs change. Information typing architecture, because it's about structured content around the type of content you are trying to create. And the A is for architecture. The important thing to note about DITA is that it is not a set of tools. It is an architecture that can be used with many different tool sets and is an open standard that is supported by OASIS. The current standard in support is DITA 1.2. DITA 1.3 is actively under development and should be released by the end of this year. I say it's actively under its final review now. And the spec has been out in adoption for almost 10 years now. So there's a wide variety of industries that have adopted it and used the adoption specialization to extend it to meet their needs. Michael Priestley and I co-wrote the DITA maturity model in 2008 as a way to have a language to talk about what it would take to adopt DITA and for organizations to understand what their investment would be to get a specific benefit. And so as you can see on the left, we have the investment, and on the right, we have the return. And I'm going to walk through the levels of investment, and I'm going to spend most of my time on levels 4 and 5 because that's the area that really supports cross-team or enterprise-level content reuse and sharing. So the first level of adoption is at the topic level. DITA is a typing architecture where the smallest level is a topic. A topic can be stored as a single file, or it can be stored in multiple topics in a single file, which means that if you are moving from an organization, let's say that you have documents that are chapter-based, initially it might not be applicable for you during conversion to move all your content into separate topics so that one chapter that's 25 pages would become 25 topics. Initially you might say, oh goodness, in order to get the benefit of XML, which is the separating of content from the formatting, we just need to get over and we're going to have multiple topics in a single file. This allows you to get the benefits of the single sourcing without the investment of fully chunking all your content. An example of this might be a government agency that needs to produce audience-specific versions of a government policy. You know, the author can write all the content in one file and apply conditional processing values and produce different versions of the policy for permanent or contract employees. And again, another example is to use this stage as a stepping point during the conversion process to make the move over to XML. Your investment, at this point, you're migrating into XML, and you're storing multiple topics in a single file. One thing about XML is that once you move into XML, you need to be able to have transforms to get your content out. That is not specific to DITA. The return here is that you can get multiple deliverables from a single XML source. You can customize deliverables with conditional processing, and you get some savings from eliminating redundant content. A lot of times when you have content in multiple organizations, it's similar or maybe even identical because the common way for reusing content is a copy and paste, and things quickly get out of sync. This is that first step of eliminating that type of redundancy. Level 2 is scalable reuse. When you break your content down into multiple topics, so you take that 25-page chapter and you move it into 25 separate topics, it seems like a lot of separate files to manage, but the benefit is that if you need to have one procedure, one task topic from that chapter that you need to include in different deliverables, you can find it easily. It's not going to be like you do now. If you have all your content in one file, you have to hunt through and then you have to copy and paste it. Instead, you'd have your file, you'd be able to reference it into a map. And the DITA map is the collection that says, okay, here are all the topics that I need to have for this context. And here's the organization in which they should appear. So the map allows you to set the collection, present the hierarchy, and also present relationships between the information. Multiple maps can reference the same topic. This means that if you want to have the same topic appear in a book, a help system, or in content that is displayed on a mobile device, you can have different maps that all reference the same topic. So for instance, if we have the 3 different topic types here, maybe one's task, one's concept, and one's reference, you can see that they can appear in multiple maps. Having the same topic in multiple maps means that instead of copying and pasting that content into multiple instances, you are referencing the same content, and should you need to change the content, you are changing it in one place, and all reference instances of that content will be updated. This goes a long way to helping you get quality and consistency across your content, regardless of the deliverable pipeline that you're sending it out in. Oops. The level of investment here is you need to separate the topics into individual files for reuse. This is an additional step. It does take more work, but what you have is the ability to reuse information at a more granular level. This is the key to reuse with DITA. You can have the topic maps that allow you to organize individual collections, and you can reference those maps with other maps. So for instance, if you create a collection of glossary topics for a product area, if you have 4 different deliverables that all relate to that product area, you can reference that same set of glossary topics as a whole, all 400, let's say, glossary topics, or any one of them, or any subset of them. This helps so much to get you out of the copy and paste and into a true reuse paradigm. The information architecture, you need to develop it if you want to reuse metadata and have good user access. This is something that does not happen by accident. This means that you do need to take some time up front when you do your architecture to plan what content should people reuse and what content should they not. One of the things to keep in mind is that people consider themselves to be content creators. No one, if you ask them, they say, oh, my title is content reuser. That's not how they view their work. They see themselves as creating additional content that adds value. And so our goal is to enable them to spend more time on the content they need to create, because that's where their value is added, and allow them to reuse the content that should just be there because it's what everyone needs. And you have to plan for that. Level 3 is around specialization. DITA is a standard that is based on the idea that you can extend it without creating custom or proprietary structures. What that means is that instead of going out and creating your own XML that you would have to go and configure and have custom tools developed to be able to process, DITA has a mechanism called specialization that allows you to extend from the root base of topic to create new structures that the DITA Open Toolkit can resolve back to the foundation or to the base of topic. So at the root of all content is the topic. We can see we have task topics, we have concept topics, and we have reference topics. Those are the 3 keys. You can also, in the other category, create other structures that you might need. So for instance, if you are doing training, you might need to have a tutorial or an exercise, and that would be a natural extension of the task structure. The task structure is a structure that is optimized to present procedures. The conceptual topic is much more free-formed or flexible in that it's there for presenting information that is to be explained. That could be a policy if you're in insurance. It could be a proposal if you're in sales. It could be an instructional content. It could be the actual content that would go into a textbook or into the body of a lesson. Reference is information that I always think about as nothing but the facts, ma'am. This would be a report if you were generating, for instance, a financial services report. It could be data specifications if you are in marketing. It could be a list of tools that you need to have or parts that you need to have if you're in services. It might be the list of operating systems that any given piece of information supports if you're in technical support. The other category, that's where specialization really comes into play, is that what if you need to have something that does not have an innate inheritance back to any of the original structures that are shipped out of the box with DITA, you have a way to extend the foundation without going and having to create your own processing. And this is a fully supported function by all the DITA-aware component content management systems. So if you were to go and leverage DITA and go to talk to tool vendors, when they say that they support DITA, they also mean that they support the ability for you to extend the basic spec as needed for your content. This is a huge benefit, and I will be quite frank with you that fully half of my clients, they invested in XML years ago, sometimes 10, 12 years ago, to get the benefits of the separation of content from formatting. But DITA wasn't mature enough at that time to help them. And now, 10 years in, they're looking at it and saying the investment for us to maintain our proprietary tools is simply much more costly than it would be for us to move over into DITA and leverage the flexibility of an open source cross-industry standard. And this is because specialization allows them to get what they had with their proprietary systems and, again, more. So your investment here is adopting the DITA standard. This means that you're using structure for creating content, and that means that if I go to put together a product offering and I need to go and find data that's in a reference table, if I go to a reference topic, I know what I'm going to get. There are not going to be any surprises for me there, so I can use the content with confidence. You can adopt the out-of-the-box DITA specializations or develop your own. If you need custom elements for semantic value, then you have ability to add them through the standard without having to go and create custom proprietary code that would require custom tool investment. This allows you to reduce your cost of integrating and translating and publishing content, and to be able to, if you have a situation where you need to exchange content with partners or provide content that other folks can integrate and rebrand for their content, their deliverables, and their customers, having an open standard really gives you a lot more flexibility and a great solid foundation for this. An example is an insurance company that wants to author all of their content in XML to take advantage of the conditional processing and have multi-channel output. They create their specializations for each content type and can automate their system to combine policy and procedure information with actual claim information to provide just-in-time compound documents that can be appropriate to the audience. So if you have, in the case of insurance, you have to worry about the HIPAA with policies, with privacy, that you could have audience-specific information based on whether it is the patient versus the provider versus the pharmacist, and be able to provide just the appropriate information in a structured way that combines these different types of information as they need it. Level 4 is about automation and integration, and this is where folks really start to see the investment. And I'll be honest, a lot of teams jump right into the DITA implementation at level 3 and move into level 4 within a year. They see the value and the real business benefit of getting in and sharing their content across their enterprise. In this situation, multiple users can create, share, and use content, and in some cases it's appropriate to have multiple repositories. For example, if you're working with a large equipment manufacturer that is trying to standardize their creation of their technical content across multiple organizations, they have technical content that is in their documentation, in their training, in their marketing, in their technical support, and their service information. The reality is that they want to be able to access the information when appropriate and reuse it, and by having their content in a shared architecture, so if they have all their content in XML in a single repository, and they have another repository that stores their digital assets, and for instance a digital asset management system, and perhaps they also have information around their product specs stored in a SQL Server or other repository, that they can be integrated so that the authors, when they're creating their content, can access the information and integrate it, and then have the leverage of the consistency and the reuse, so that when content goes out to the customer, regardless of whether they're coming in through the website, whether they're coming in through their mobile device, whether they're looking at the display on the equipment, that they're getting the same information and that there's confidence that the information they have is correct. The investment here is substantially higher. In order to have access to easily reuse content, you really need to store it in a place that everyone can access it. This means that you need to be in a DITA-aware component content management system, a CCMS. If you want to leverage the translation value of being an XML and have consistent translation for a worldwide audience, you should also have a translation management system. If you need to have asset management with features like attribution, it may or may not be enough to have it in the same CMS with your content. You may also need a digital asset management system. This is where IT's involvement from the beginning of the implementation is a requirement. I cannot say that strongly enough. I'm going to say it again. Do not even attempt to go to this level of investment without IT support, because you need them. This is what they do best. If you work with them, get your requirements in place, tell them, our return, what success looks like for us is being able to automate our processes and workflow through an integrated tool environment. They can help you. And I've never seen a team do it without IT support. The other piece of this is having a strong metadata model. Now, folks always ask me, well, what's metadata? And of course, the smart answer that everyone says, well, it's data about data. Well, metadata can be as simple as, in printed books, you have index terms. That's a form of metadata. Anytime you have an identifying number, like a book code number, an ISBN, a course number, a part number, all those are types of metadata. You have metadata all over the place. At this level of investment, you should be harmonizing your metadata and getting a list of at least a core set that you all share. At a minimum, you probably have a list of product names, probably have a list of operating systems, probably have a list of part numbers that everyone should be using consistently across your enterprise. And IT probably has some systems, or unfortunately maybe multiple systems, that have that information, and you need to start working with them to be able to leverage that in order to be able to get some of that automation and customization. If you have content in multiple repositories, you cannot share it unless you build a pathway between the repositories. And if you think of the pathway as a railway, the cars on the train are linked together with metadata that bring it back and forth, because you don't want to just throw content back and forth. You want to pass it within context, and that's what metadata will give you. Level 5. Level 5 is around semantics, and semantics means taking that level of metadata and taking it to the next level, which means that you want to invest in taxonomy, which gives you, rather than just having a bunch of lists of metadata that are separate, that you would have a strong backbone of classified values that would enable you to say, oh, okay, I know that when I create this piece of information, regardless of what group I'm in, it applies to this one or two categories. And by doing that, from the author's point of view, if all I do is I specify one or two values, the relationships within the taxonomy would then go and apply a matrix of other values that could be leveraged when I need to output that information to different deliverable pipelines. So for instance, if I have created a set of documents that apply to one particular operating system, one particular product line, and they're around one specific task, if I select the appropriate metadata values, when a customer logs into the website and selects that property, that operating system and that task, they should be able to get taken to that piece of content without having to know what group organized, what group wrote it, or any other information. We want to get them the information they need as quickly as possible. I'm sure you're all familiar with the idea of logging in and having a profile on a website. There is a certain amount of information that folks are being willing to give in order to get value back. And if you're going to ask people for what are the products that you have licenses for, what is the role you have in your organization, what operating systems are you deploying on, etc., then we can give them better information that's more targeted. If we can also take that to another level, which is they say, oh, I am interested in, my role is a system administrator, or I'm a service rep, I really need to know information about these 3 product lines that I can see for these 3 customers, and I need to see the as shipped versus as configured versus as maintained information. Then we can, if we have the right tie-ins with the business processes and the backbone of the taxonomy, we can get them the right information at the right time so that they can be efficient and deliver a seamless experience to our internal and our external customers. The investment here is significant. It seems so easy, 2 little bullets. Integrate your content and data applications. If you talk to anybody in IT, they take a big sigh and they say, yes, this is where we need to be, but it takes a lot of work because it's not necessarily about the technical investment. It's about the process change. Each one of your organizations currently has a way that they do something, right? And because we're tasked in our organizations with being efficient about meeting our particular organization's needs, we are very focused on getting our stuff out the door, and communicating with others can be a distraction. We need to flip that perception and say, the distraction should be me focusing on only what I need, and the broader focus is really what's going to get me my content out the door faster because it's the right content. And that through that integration, we get to focus on what we actually need to provide, and we can leverage the information that other people have there as well. That means that you have to be able to work across group. It's not simply a matter of getting some tools in place. You need to have governance boards. I know people hate the G word, but you need it. If you're going to start with something really basic, like a glossary, you have to be able to agree on what terms mean. When I was at IBM, it took us 2 years to get down from 20 definitions of the word component to 12. And we felt some satisfaction that we got that far. If your company is smaller than IBM, you should move a little faster than that. But there are times when the same word may have different meanings, or the same term would apply differently in different contexts. But in order for you to leverage a taxonomy that is based upon a common understanding of terminology, you have to have some way as an organization for you to agree on what that means and manage it. And therefore, you need to have new processes and a workflow that is supported by tooling in order to see that personalized, integrated content experience that your end users really want. Developing your taxonomies. One of the examples, if you're in the learning space, is to be able to have a strong taxonomy around learning objectives. DITA 1.2 introduced the learning and training specializations, and I've been working with teams for about 5 years on leveraging this. One of the teams I'm working with is now an education, professional education university. They are implementing learning objectives as part of a taxonomy to be able to have folks take a test, a pre-assessment, to determine what is the optimal course for them in a given field of study based upon their current knowledge. And by having each question in the assessment bound to a learning objective, which is also then bound to the instructional content based upon the student's performance on the assessment, they can say, oh, they obviously understand these first 4 learning objectives, and then they need a course that focuses on the other 5 learning objectives that were in this study, this unit of study, and we can build them a custom experience that allows them to learn exactly what they need to learn and not waste their time rehashing content that they already know. Level 6 is the universal semantic system, and this is the holy grail. And this is what every organization strives for, and I'll be honest, I've not yet seen it, because just when you think you're getting somewhere and you're making progress and you got everybody on the same page, something happens. Your company goes out and buys another company, or even better, your company is bought by another company. And the integration at level 4 and level 5 starts all over again. However, it's not without purpose to strive for this so that we can have a universal knowledge management experience so that we can give our clients and our customers the universal satisfaction of getting exactly what they want from us in a consistent way and having confidence that it's accurate, as opposed to getting the same or different information depending on which aspect or portion of your company they get their information from. So if you can change your organization's mindset to have collaboration and have standards and work towards common user goals, you get all the benefits of the previous levels, plus you have a scalable architecture and adaptive networks that you can integrate as your customers' needs change and as your company grows and acquires, hopefully acquires additional products and services to meet their ever-changing customer landscape. So in summary, why DITA? DITA is an industry standard, open source XML architecture that is flexible, and it has a scalable architecture that allows you to have constant improvement. At the minimum, you get XML topics. At the maximum, you get an integrated dynamic content and data architecture that can go across your enterprise. The benefits accrue at each level, and for those of you in the training, the learning and training content starts with the specialization and integration at level 4. There are also, for instance, for the folks in tech support, DITA 1.3 is introducing a troubleshooting support, and there are additional other market-specific or industry-specific topics, such as the machinery topic, that task topic that supports service industry that for machinery that came in DITA 1.2. The message is that XML gives you the foundation. DITA is a standard that allows you to leverage this with an architecture to meet your ever-changing needs. So do we have questions?
Well, the first batch of questions was just asking the results of the polls, so let me just share that information. But in the meantime, if anyone has any additional questions, please use the chat function. Here are the respondents for the first poll, which was, what functional area do you represent? 71% of the respondents indicated that they're in technical communications. 24% indicated that they are in support. 14% are in marketing. And 10% are in product training and professional services. The responses for the second poll, which was what organizations would you like to share content with, 86% of the respondents indicated that they are would like to share content with support, 77% with technical communications, 73% with product training, 55% with marketing, and 50% with professional services. Just wait to see if we get some more questions come in.
Well, I'll talk for a moment then, if that's okay, while folks think of questions. You know, for folks that are not aware of DITA, there are organizations that I've worked with that have implemented DITA not from the tech pub's point of view first, but for organizations such as marketing. One company, they did a study where they tracked the experience of potential customers on their website, and they found out that 60% of their prospective clients checked the content in multiple areas of their website, including marketing brochures, tech support, and tech pubs, before they purchased. And what they found was when people didn't purchase, they followed their trail and found that the data specifications were not consistent in the 3 different areas. And so they realized that they were losing sales because of the inconsistency of their data, and so they implemented DITA for their marketing team first, so they could make sure that their data specs were accurate, that their sales folks were fully empowered with the correct information every time they went out to an engagement, and then they were able to repurpose that information throughout their e-commerce site, their Drupal stream, their tech pubs, and able to harmonize and get all their data in sync, and they saw a marked increase in the amount of sales that they got because they no longer were making you know, basically a faux pas by not having consistent data out on their website.
Okay. The next question that came in was, can you describe the troubleshooting specialization critical to technical communications?
So Amber, I think that's yours.
Yes, there is a new topic type, and it is based off of a task, and I don't have it up right now, so I don't want to actually mislead you, but if you would like to, if that person would be willing to get me provide their information to me, I'd be happy to send them something offline. I don't want to misspeak because the spec is still under review, but it is there to be able to. The challenge with troubleshooting is that there is usually a problem statement, and then there is a set of processes that you need to go through in order to you know, identify the cause and then to resolve it. And so the traditional task with only being able to have a single set of steps did not meet that need. And so this is why the troubleshooting topic has been created. But I do not have it up in front of me, and because it's still under development, I don't want to misspeak and misrepresent some things.
So Amber, there's another slide that has contact information on it. So if you want to just advance that, then people can, if somebody has a question about that, they can get it to you directly.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, Amber, another question for you was, for some reason my function just froze. Sorry about that. What was the example you had just mentioned about content? I need data to support the customers. I need data to support that customers see the content as a value add. I'm in a company where content is not seen as a valued asset, and I need to change that mindset.
So one of the ways to think about this is, like, so the example of the other company was that they took the time to find out where people were going on their website and why people were leaving their website without actually purchasing. And they found out that their content that was being displayed on their website was inconsistent, and it was hurting their bottom line. Joan, do you want to speak to how to represent or change the value proposition of seeing content as a as a profit center rather than a cost center?
Well, I think, yeah, I think first of all, there are a couple of things. The example that I mentioned was in support, and actually so content was created to support call agents. And they support is a function that does a lot of tracking, and they were able to track the time spent on level 1 and level 2 calls once we put in this system that was put the content in a central repository. And they showed that the time on calls went down, and that was easily calculated from the perspective of what the cost saving was, especially since this was a large multinational company and they outsourced some of their support to various call centers. So it was easy for them to track that, and it could be directly related to the value. They also, by taking that content, as I said, and repurposing it, making it available out on the public website, once they did that, they were also able to track the fact that level 1 calls started to decrease, and they could track the value of that. It was relatively easy to do. And so it became obvious that having this, the other thing was that because the content was XML content, could be transformed, they could have a direct savings in terms of how much it cost them to repurpose this content. Before, it had been cut and pasted and had to be reformatted by hand into new formats, and now it could simply be transformed. So it could be kept up to date and transformed and pushed out to various locations. And that was actually a relatively easy way to say, here's the value of this. We can actually lower our cost by doing this. One of the things that I think is a problem in doing this is that a lot of people don't track things very closely. You know, they don't. Go ahead.
Sorry. I have an example where a company that working on they had medical devices, and they needed to be able to go with the service technicians needed to go out into the field and be able to have the service information available on a tablet. They moved to DITA not because they wanted to move to DITA. It necessarily. They upgraded all of their service support framework for their processing, and they needed all their content to be in XML so that when the technician went to do their service on the device, that they would just go to the tablet, they see the task, and if they needed to follow it, they could click it open. And the same content that appeared in the manuals, that appeared out in the training that they had received, appeared on their tablet, and they were able to walk through it and just close it, and it was expandable and collapsible, and it fed into their business tracking processes so that they could just click on the tablet as opposed to having to carry a large manual with them everywhere. And that made a big difference in the quality and of the repairs, the time it took the technicians to actually make the service call, and that they were getting more confidence from their folks that when they went out to a place that they knew ahead of time what the task would, they'd have all the parts and everything they needed right with them, because all that information was linked in their system via metadata that if you're performing this task, it required X parts and X tools.
I think a big piece of it is first having a clear understanding of what it is that you're trying to do or where you think the problem is, and then starting to actually collect some data to support that. And then your decision can be really data-driven, which is a big piece of justifying moving in a new direction.
Yeah, you can't compare savings to something if you don't know what the baseline is of how much it really costs you now. And a lot of times, the cost of your content is broken up through different groups, and you might have to go all the way to the top of your company to find the place where the true cost actually comes to light. Particularly if translation is handled in a different unit, that you have content being developed and reviewed by different people, and I encourage you to do your homework and find out what your current content costs to produce now, so that you can ascertain what are you getting for that investment, because you're spending the money anyway. Do you want to get more from that investment? If so, then you know how much it costs, and then you can say, okay, if we were to spend this much again, would we want to get more value for our money because we're making the investment already? Thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thank you. I see we're at the top of the hour, so thank you everyone for attending. And thank you, Adam, for hosting this.
Oh, you're welcome, everyone. This was definitely a very informative webinar. And just to let the attendees know, you will be receiving emails from both DITA Conversion Laboratory and Lasselle-Ramsay alerting you to future webinars. You can also visit both of our websites at www.dclab.com and www.lr.com. This concludes today's broadcast. Our next webinar will be Wednesday, April 30th at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, titled Dealing with Input Providers, presented by Barry Schaefer, Content Lifecycle Consulting. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.